Stress can build you or destroy you, and today's video will help you make the former happen. 72% of the population has problems dealing with stress in their personal, family, or work life. You may wake up with palpitations in the middle of the night, not getting rest, no matter how much you sleep. Or your mood may plummet. The cause could be financial pressure, your work relationship, health status, your work environment, or a combination of them. The reality is that the more tools you have to deal with these situations without your health being harmed, the better. Today we talk about 3 ingredients with scientific evidence that can make your path easier. If you want to go straight to them, they are at the end of the video. But to get the most out of them, you first need to better understand your relationship with stress. And for that, I ask you a question. Is stress bad? Stress is necessary for life? Conceptualize it properly. Stress is neither bad nor good. Acute stress is defined as a psychological and physiological response to a real or perceived environmental threat. That's stress. Though this response may feel uncomfortable, it is what allows you to cope with everyday challenges that allow you to live and that matter to you. Without an adequate dose of daily stress, your performance would be very poor. You grow as a person in any area thanks to the right dose of stress. In fact, the simple act of starting to consider stress and pressure as something not necessarily negative or even positive will reduce the negative effects of stress on your body. We can then establish a bell or inverted U graph that relates performance and stress levels. Little stress would generate suboptimal performance, but the same would happen with a lot of stress. And yet, the human being is very good at tolerating, adapting, and responding to doses of stress. Yes, but only for a short time at high levels. Studying for an exam for 2 weeks, running a marathon, or having to develop new job skills because you've been moved to a different position. What we don't handle well and what seriously harms you is extending that stress response over time. A chronic illness, a 2-year pandemic, or a difficult grief to process. This is what we call chronic stress, and it generates a series of neuroendocrine and immunometabolic changes that worsen your health. We could spend hours debating the physiological consequences of chronic stress, but we're going to summarize it as an overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system apart from the autonomic nervous system responsible for the fight or flight response. An overproduction of stress hormones, the main ones being cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline, greater resistance to insulin, dyslipidemia, and blood pressure that is a metabolic worsening and also an impoverished immune response. These elements, as you can imagine, are the perfect breeding ground for most chronic diseases, with the added risk that since stress is a subjective perception, many of you will end up normalizing living in a situation of chronic stress for a very long time. And as we always say, normalizing something is the first step to not solving it. In conclusion, your goal is to find the optimal stress level that maximizes performance without compromising health. This dose exists, it does, and it's different for each one of us. To reach your goal, understand this concept. Your stress resilience is influenced by your inborn traits, past experiences, and personality. This would be the size of the container. Some individuals handle uncertainty and complexity better than others. In the face of this, there's not much you can do, but you can always improve your stress tolerance using the methods I'll share with you now. Then we have another important element, the number of pipes that add stress to your container and their flow. There will be small pipes that add a little stress continuously. You might have a slight complex about some part of your appearance. There will also be large pipes that add a great deal of stress, an unexpected loss of a loved one, or being bullied at school. And there will be pipes that add stress intermittently, preparing for a competition or a sports competition, having injured yourself or having failed an exam. As you can imagine, the greater the magnitude and stability of the stressor, the worse. But not even this second element that we can call stressors are the most important, and they are not because all of us, to a greater or lesser extent, are going to be exposed to them throughout life. The most important thing is the third element, which we will call psychological stabilizers. These stabilizers can be represented as drains through which we expel stress from the container. The good thing is that we can create drains with our effort and will, that is, this part of the equation is totally dynamic, changing, malleable. These stabilize the amount of stress, which ideally should fluctuate within not too wide margins. Keep in mind that you will always have pipes contributing stress and always drains eliminating it, or you should have them. What can happen, and often does happen, is a mismatch, a temporal discrepancy between the inputs and outputs of stress. We all have some drain working in our lives. Friends we turn to when we're down. Playing sports, sex, video games, music, a walk in the park, writing, playing an instrument, spending time with our partner. Everyone knows their own, they are very personal, but be very careful because in a high-stress situation, it is also easy to fall into the wrong drains, mainly alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs or pharmaceuticals. These coping tools are like a pipe that drains stress through one outlet and brings it back in greater amounts through another entrance. In the long term, it creates more chronic stress and worsens the situation. If you remember, during the months of confinement, we were deprived of most psychological stabilizers. This triggered a global mental health crisis that persists to this day. We couldn't have contact with friends, family, nature, and our physical activity was greatly reduced. In any case, now you understand the importance of psychological stabilizers to prevent our container from filling up too much. In the world of stress supplements, there are very few with enough scientific evidence to be recommended. A group of those we have already talked about and therefore will leave for another occasion are the adaptogens. These can, more than eliminating the stress from your vessel, slightly increase its size. Those you will discover today have the ability to remove some stress from the vessel, improving and enhancing relaxation responses. However, it's always important to remind you that supplements will never be the most important thing nor the solution. For serious chronic stress or diagnosed clinical conditions, proper therapy or prescription drugs, if needed, are irreplaceable. Aside from that, we have interventions that will demonstrably improve both anxiety and stress. We're discussing various meditation techniques, physical exercise, and the innovative field of psychedelics, which we'll cover soon. Now, let's see what these ingredients are with scientific evidence. Passion flower. I'm sure you've heard of it. Passion flower is included in many anti-stress supplements or relaxing infusions. The passion flower incarnata is commonly used in tropical areas to treat insomnia and anxiety. Phytochemicals like chrysin and benzoflavone in it modulate GABAergic neurotransmission, reducing stress and anxiety symptoms. Gamma-aminobutyric acid is a depressant neurotransmitter, important in the relaxation response. Some studies, like this one, done on patients with generalized anxiety disorder, supplementation for a month with passion flower was as effective as benzodiazepines. Effective in what? Effective in reducing anxiety. Needless to say, the short and long-term side effects are much less than those of benzodiazepines. In this case, the most common side effects are drowsiness, low blood pressure when combined with antihypertensives, and in some rare cases a rash. Let's continue with the second. Saffron, derived from the Crocus sativa plant, it has been traditionally used to add flavor to meals. Its structure houses 4 families of molecules with proven neuroprotective effect: the crosins, the crofetins, the picrocrosin, and the safranol. These increase brain neurotrophic factors, like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and modulate the activity of the hypothalamic pituitary-adrenal axis, which controls stress hormone production from the adrenals or suprarenals. Remember, cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. An overactive hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis means more stress hormones than desirable, less recovery response, and a greater propensity to suffer the consequences of chronic stress. For these reasons, Adrian Lopresti and Peter Drummond describe in this review the antidepressant and anti-stress effect of this plant. Similarly, a 2019 meta-analysis of 6 clinical trials with 375 participants was conducted. It concludes that saffron at the appropriate dose reduces symptoms of anxiety with a moderate to high effect. As important precautions, its bioactive compounds can interfere with the activity of drug metabolizing enzymes, that is, they could generate pharmacological interactions. In such case, if you take drugs, consult possible interactions with your doctor first. Saffron also has a mild hypoglycemic effect. If you take anti-diabetic drugs that can cause hypoglycemia, be careful. The standard dose is 30 milligrams of saffron extract obtained from the stigma of the Crocus sativa plant. It is taken as 2 15-milligram doses split into 2 intakes, and the third, lavender, belongs to the family of plants known as Lamiaceae. It is traditionally used in aromatherapy to reduce anxiety due to its calming effect. The 2 main bioactive compounds that exert this effect are linalool and linallyl acetate. The main mechanisms by which it generates anti-stress and anxiety effects are the inhibition of voltage-dependent calcium channels in the brain and the modulation of serotonergic neurotransmission. Both inhaled application in aromatherapy, as well as topical and oral, have shown benefit in this regard. But a clear limitation of aromatherapy is that the studies cannot be blinded, as the smell of lavender cannot be hidden. The main precaution with lavender has to do with my specialty, endocrinology. There is some evidence that lavender oil has estrogenic properties and could cause gynecomastia, especially in children and adolescents. The most frequent oral dose is 80 milligrams daily in oral format. As for aromatherapy, the optimal doses are not clear at all. How can I benefit from these compounds? Many forms and supplements are available on the market. If you have found any effective ones, please share them in the comments. I'm going to show you this one that I use from time to time. And why? Well, because 2 of the 3 ingredients mentioned are included in the Clear Mind supplement at effective doses. This is in addition to rhodiola and ashwagandha. However, these supplements work best at peaks of stress, but not as a long-term continuous strategy. That's all for today's video. Hope you found it helpful. Remember that you have much more and completely free in our newsletter, which you can sign up for right here.